Hey guys, hi, welcome back once again. My name is Vaishali, and having learned quite a few things from, through, and from within human interactions, and having pursued and completed my master's in business administration and in clinical psychology, I today wish to talk about habits and how habits at times can curtail and impede our growth, can be detrimental towards our own evolution, towards our own transformation. So, just like everything else in life, or at least about the human life, habits are also double edged swords. And that is not to categorize habits as good or bad, positive or negative. Habits are just habits, formed with constant, consistent repetition. And repetition with regards to thoughts, with regards to words, with regards to actions, with regards to behaviors, and with regards to beliefs. So, all of these factors, when they get repeated over and over and over and over again over a period of time, become our habits. Now, let's actually also observe that. Let's analyze that. Let's study that aspect as well. It is repetition or cumulative repetition of the experiences that we've had with regards to our thoughts, with regards to our words, with regards to our actions, with regards to our behaviors, and with regards to our beliefs that keep giving the same outcome over and over and over again, invariably implying the cumulative past experiences that have been repeated over and over and over and over again, invariably also implying that it is accumulation of all of the past memories repeated over and over and over again over a very long period of time, invariably also implying that it is the past experiences, the memories of the past experiences that is still continuing, that is still presenting itself today as us, as our personality, as a manifestation of our personal reality. And to a degree, to a large degree, if habits are all of those accumulated past experiences through accumulated past memories, it quite naturally is revealing two things to us, that it is the past replaying itself even today, even in the present, and therefore the present is actually not present but is absent, at least to a very large degree. Now, habits, like I mentioned earlier, are the accumulation of all of the past memories and experiences with regards to our thoughts, with regards to our ideas, with regards to our words, with regards to our actions, with regards to our behaviors, with regards to our beliefs, with regards to our choices and our decisions. It quite naturally, after a point in time, becomes automatic, becomes almost robotic, becomes almost mechanical. And anything that becomes automatic, anything that becomes robotic and mechanical, quite naturally becomes mindless. For our mind doesn't have to engage with it in the present moment. It doesn't have to get curious about it in the present moment. It doesn't need to be amazed by it in the present reality. It doesn't need to be awestruck and wonderstruck in our present reality, in the present experience. Because habits do not form within half an hour, within 30 seconds, within 30 days. They are formed over a very long period of time, wherein they become a part of an automatic reaction, a reaction that happens from within the body itself, and thereby habits get embodied as well. They get a part of the body itself. They rather form a huge part of our bodies itself, which is why habits lose their intentionality as well. Now let's even think about it. Science today tells us that most of our manifested reality, the reality that we experience today, that we share today, is a cumulative experience, accumulated experience, primarily and mainly of our subconscious, essentially of our avchetan man, the aspects of ourselves that we are not completely aware of, the aspects about ourselves that we are barely partially even aware of. That is why avchetan, half chetan. And if habits are a larger chunk of our subconscious, and if our present reality and our life is an extension of that subconscious that we are barely partially aware of, then are we just a bundle of habits and nothing more than that? So, well, then let me put it a little differently. Let me frame it a little differently. If somebody were to come and ask you, if somebody were to come and ask me, tell me who you are, well, how weird it is that I don't end up saying, well, I'm just a bundle of habits. Well, you are just a bundle of habits. And think about the other person's reaction, wherein they might say, oh, wow, I didn't realize that you were thinking, walking, talking, bundle of habits. And have we ever wondered, have we ever taken the time to inquire, to reflect, to get a little more curious to say, if 97 to 98% of myself, of every human being, is operating through their subconscious and their unconscious, which is based on habitual and thereby familiar in keeping with the past. Thoughts, words, ideas, actions, behaviors, beliefs, and a larger chunk, 97 to 98% of the chunk of our experiential reality, the way we experience our reality, the way it has manifested itself today in the present, is an outcome of all of that subconscious, which is habitual and thereby familiar. How do we still not react or maybe even respond by saying, oh, well, I'm just a bundle of habits, just a bunch of habits, when somebody asks us, who are you? Or tell me something about yourself. And we do not do it because on some level we do realize that we are much more than our habits. On some level we do realize that we are the creators of our habits, that our habits originate from us. And since they originate from us, they can naturally be changed by us, from us as well. They can naturally be discarded from us and by us itself. They can naturally be transformed over a period of time by us and from us itself as well. So, yes, then on a subconscious level, if we were just talking about our subconscious, we can actually comfortably say, objectively say, that yes, we are all just a bundle of habits, a bunch of habits. Once again, habits with regards to thoughts, to ideas, to words, to beliefs, to actions, to behaviors. But on a very conscious level, we also know that we are far greater than our habits. And though habits do help us do things efficiently, faster, it increases productivity. To a degree, it even improvises our skills. And yet, at the same time, in the same breath, just like there are two sides to all coins, to any coin, habits also have a dual modality. Habits also have a double side to it. And that is why, just like this coin can't be termed as a good coin or a bad coin, the metal that it is made from can't be termed as a good metal or a bad metal, but just as a metal. Likewise, every habit, though provides efficiency, though provides productivity, though might even add a little bit to the skill sets, can also have the tendency, can also have the proclivity of having another side which can impede and constrict our growth, which can curtail our evolution and our transformation. Well, so the natural question is, how does that work? How does that operate? How does that look? Well, since habits are a resultant of past familiar experiences, quite naturally, it also directly, very obviously tells us that we are not being present in the moment, in the present moment. At least 97 to 98% of the times of every moment, we are not actually being completely present. For that is operated by our subconscious, which is constituted by our habits, by the familiar past experiences, by the familiar known. And in a way, it then tells us that we are not mindful about our living, about our present reality, about the present moment as well. The second aspect being that since it is habitual and is automatic, quite naturally, we lose the sense of curiosity, we lose the sense of being amazed, of being awestruck, of being wonderstruck. Just think about it during the entire day, during the 24 hours that we live our day by. How many things are we amazed at? With regards to ourselves and with regards to the world that we live in. How many of us have this sense of wonder and this sense of awe that we get to experience on every single day at every hour of the day, if not every minute of the day? How many of us get curious and curiously amazed to inquire, to reflect upon ourselves, to inquire, to reflect on others? And if none of those things are happening for most days of our life, it's naturally not possible to feel a sense of liveliness. And since habits can dampen curiosity, can dampen the sense of awe, can dampen the sense of wonder, can dampen the sense of liveliness, how is it not possible that it will then not dampen our sense of interest, our sense of engagement with ourselves, with others, and the world that we live in, the world that we inhabit? Now, if our curiosity has dampened, if our sense of wonder, if our sense of awe, if our sense of liveliness, if our sense of interest and engagement has dampened, has reduced, quite naturally our sense of openness will also be hampered, will also be dampened, will also be curtailed. And all of these are interconnected, wherein they not only connect with each other, but they also intersect and overlap with each other. Now, at times, we also identify, or rather, many a times, we identify with our habits as our habits. Now, if, say, somebody has been smoking for 20 or 30 years, we naturally begin to call them a smoker. If somebody has been drinking alcohol, a habit that they have picked up over time, have maintained over time, we naturally begin to call them an alcoholic. If somebody has been putting in very hard work, we call them a hard worker, wherein their habit of working hard has now become their very identity. If somebody has been pretty abusive over a course of time, we label them as an abuser. If someone is able to communicate well, which is a skill set that they have developed over a period of time, implying habits again, we call them excellent communicators. And they start to identify with the label of being an excellent communicator. If somebody has gotten in the habit of waking up early, we call them an early riser. While as if somebody else has gotten in the habit or has inculcated the habit of sleeping pretty late, we call them a late sleeper or a night owler, invariably making their identities as their habit, invariably identifying the people as their habits. And it happens so automatically that we forget that we are not our habits, that we are the creators of our habits, and that we also can course correct our habits, that we are the authors of our habits, and thereby can also bring about changes in those habits, and that we do not have to identify by those labels. Which reminds me of two beautiful things, a quote by Robin Sharma and a dialogue by Shah Rukh Khan in the movie Tears in the Eye. So the quote goes something like this, that don't live the same life for 75 years, 365 days of those 75 years in exactly the same way, doing exactly the same thing, thinking exactly the same thoughts, speaking the same things, and carrying the same beliefs, and then claiming that it's a life well lived. Now, I've paraphrased this quote, but the exact quote goes something like this. And the second dialogue by Shah Rukh Khan, wherein he plays the role of a therapist, of a counselor in the movie Dear Zindagi, as Dr. Jahangir Khan, goes something like this. जब कभी भी जिंदगी में कोई आदत बनती दिखाई दे, कोई भी आदत, just pause and think to reflect. Do you wish to carry that forward, or do you wish to stop it there? Or maybe you wish to change the narrative of that habit. And in a way, he's saying that once you recognize a habit, a pattern being formed at any point in time in life, just stop to reflect and think if you'd like to carry it forward, if you'd like to drop it then and there, i.e., let go of it, or you'd like to change the narrative of that habit, the narrative of the storyline underlying that habit, and which is exactly what mindfulness is about. It is exactly at this point in time, the writer through Shah Rukh Khan and the dialogue, as a therapist and as a counselor, as a very wise teacher and a mentor, is trying to tell us, first, become mindful that a pattern, a habit is beginning to form, is beginning to take shape. And before it becomes your subconscious driver, even a subconscious, unconscious dictator of your life and your life choices, become aware, get aware, to understand if you need to carry it forward, to understand if you need to let go of it right at this point in time when you've become aware of it, or you need to change the storyline of that narrative with regards to the formation of that habit or that pattern. The second message through this dialogue is to understand that if you do not pay attention to these habits, to these patterns that are beginning to take shape, they will begin to control and dictate your life. You will become enslaved to them, rather than you being the owner and the creator of the same. The third point through this dialogue that he brings up is that we are essentially not our habits, and we need to disidentify ourselves from that idea, from that habit. We need to detach our identity from the habit or the habits, the patterns in our lives. For if our identity has attached itself to its own habits. Our self worth, unfortunately, gets determined by our habits. And any kind of an attack or any kind of a threat to those habits feels like a personal attack, feels like a threat, an attack to our self worth and our self esteem. And unfortunately, when we feel attacked that way, we do everything possible, Sam Dam Dandabhed, to defend that idea of our self worth. And I can cite a personal example over here in order to throw some light on it. So, few years back, if I go back into my history, wherein I had identified myself as a very hardworking person, as a very productive person, as a very self reliant person, not needing anybody's help, it was from the habit, born out of the habit of not being able to stop, of not being able to take rest, which came from the familial belief system, probably even the cultural belief system, that somebody who stops to take a little rest is lazy and therefore unworthy, unworthy of love, attention, affection, and respect. Came from the belief, came from the ideology that you can only rest once you're dead. And these are all of the messages from the past. And any time that I slowed down at that point in time, any time that I took a little time for myself, any time that I was not overproductive, I felt a lot of shame. It wasn't guilt, but it was shame, which is where slowly over a period of time, with time, I had to learn to let go and not identify with those ideas and the habits and the loop of the ideas and the habits that get created. To then realize for myself that my worth does not depend on my habits, that my worth as a person is non negotiable, that if nature has put me over here, there is a reason for my existence, there is a purpose for my existence, and my worth is not dependent upon my habits and my identification to those habits, because those habits are not me. Those habits do not define me. They might to a degree be an extension of me, but they essentially are not me. So, as much as habits inform our experiences and to a degree our expectations, our choices and our decisions, which have been accumulated through gathered experiences of the past, they can also become our subconscious cages, undermining, curtailing, impeding our curiosity, our openness, the ability to have a beginner's mindset, impeding our sense of awe and wonder, undermining our mindfulness, can also make us feel stuck, feel resentful, creating a comfort zone, inhibiting learning, and thereby inhibiting and curtailing our self evolution and transformation. So, just like every coin has two sides, as mentioned earlier, even habits, not good or bad habits, positive or negative habits, just simple habits. Every habit, all habits have two sides to them. And as much as they have the upsides of providing efficiency and productivity and probably improvising some of our skill sets over a period in time, they also have their own downsides wherein they become our subconscious cages. And then it becomes important to check as to how many things we have just gotten habituated to, whether healthy or not healthy, whether we desire them or we don't desire them, whether we appreciate them or we don't appreciate them, but we have just gotten habituated to them and therefore have lost interest, thereby curiosity, and thereby openness to the feeling of vitality and to the feeling of feeling alive, to the feeling of finding meaning in our own lives. We need to reflect if our self worth is dependent on our habits. And do we do everything within our power when we feel attacked in order to defend our habits? And invariably, our identity, which is tied to the self worth, which is tied to the habits, as explained and as demonstrated through the example about myself earlier. Have we become mindless towards our own existence and towards the existence of the people that form our inner circle, towards the existence of the world that we inhabit? When was the last time when we actually got curious about something? When was the last hour when we experienced that sense of awe and wonder and amazement? When was the last time that we were truly, wholly, completely present in the present moment? And let's try and see for ourselves what answers do we get from those questions? What answers gets revealed to us? What answers comes up for us? Because in my opinion, our life can't be so meaningless and so uninteresting and so unimportant that we just run it out of habits and not out of the sense of curiosity, not out of the sense of wonder, not out of the sense of awe, and not with openness. Let's try and ponder upon that a little. Let's try to reflect on ourselves a little. And I will see you once again the next week. Till then, stay tuned in. And guys, if you do like the contextual content of these videos, please do like, share, and subscribe.